Hi, welcome back to Meadowbank Crochet. My name is Jody. I'm documenting my journey of setting up a crochet-based charity here in the UK where I live with the sole purpose of making and donating beanie hats to people who are staying in hospitals or care homes. So if you're new, welcome and thanks for joining me. So let's get into it. What have I been up to this week? So as of last week's kickoff of this channel, I have started working on sort of the legal side of setting up a charity in the UK. And so the things that I needed to work on were getting insurance, which is personal or public liability insurance. I needed to work on creating a constitution, which kind of outlines, it's like a business plan, documents what I plan to achieve and what the guardrails are around the charity that I'm hoping to create. I also needed to create a volunteer agreement. So I've already started getting people interested in being involved. And ultimately, that's the goal of this YouTube channel, is to get the word out to any of the people in our crochet community here on YouTube. If this sounds interesting to you and you want to watch my journey, amazing. But if you want to also maybe get involved, I want to give people the opportunity to do that. This crochet community, as I've said before, has such a big heart, and we've all got a yarn stash. And so if I can activate this YouTube community of crocheters to maybe be a part of what I'm building, that would be fantastic, because this would allow me to scale this idea so that more people staying in hospitals or care homes might benefit from our craft. So I've created my first draft of my constitution for this UK-based charity, again called Meadowbank Crochet. If you want to learn more about my cause, that's www.meadowbankcrochet.uk. I'm starting to document everything out there. And speaking of that website, the other thing that I needed to do as a part of the Constitution is create a volunteer agreement for anybody in the crochet community or in the charitable organization side of things. Anybody that wants to get involved, I needed to have some sort of a document that outlines what is and isn't in scope if somebody wants to volunteer as a part of Meadowbank Crochet. So I've got my first draft of my volunteer agreement set up. And what I want to do next for next week's goals is on my website, I've got, an about page. I've got a contact us page. I've got my beanie hat tutorial on there for anybody who wants to learn how to make the beanie hat that I make, which I'll show you in a second here. There's a tutorial that kind of outlines exactly how to create the beanie hat. And then I've also got a donate section. So ultimately the goal is that people who want to donate monetarily or donate yarn can do that, so that this charity can become self-sufficient, but it also just gives people a way to pay it forward. If they're not a crocheter, but they want to contribute to the cause, they can do that by donating money or donating yarn that we will then use 100% of those proceeds, or any of that yarn intake will 100% go to creating beanie hats. So I'm not paying myself a wage through any of this. The full goal is just to make this a completely self-sufficient charity that is able to produce as many beanie hats as possible to help as many patients as we can. So that's what I did last week on the business side of things, learning to set up the charity. So again, next week, what I want to really try and do is now create a volunteer page. So the meet the volunteers section of the website, so that anybody who wants to be involved can have a profile on my website. In my business work life, am a big fan of giving people credit where credit is due. And I definitely want to do that as a part of this charity. I never want to take credit for somebody else's amazing work. So if other people want to get involved and create beanie hats, I want to make sure that I have a way to showcase them and thank them for their contributions to the Meadowbank Crochet goal. So that's what next week is going to be about. So hopefully my website will start to get updated with that volunteer page as I start to build that out. I need to tidy up my constitution and get the next phase is to get two more people in addition to me to be on the board of trustees for my charity. I'm still working on who is going to be my secretary, but I have a very good friend who is a financial wizard. That's actually what she does for a job here in the UK for a public entity. And so she has very graciously agreed to be my treasurer. And so I've got a financial expert who's aware of public sector stuff who has already signed up to be my treasurer. So I'm just still working on getting somebody to be my secretary. Then I'll be able to share my constitution with both of them and get them signed off on it so that we can submit it to the organization that we need to submit that to. So that's all future Jody's problem. Right now, that's what I plan to do for the next week. So let's look at some eye candy. So last week I shared with you sort of my wish list of yarn that I wanted to try and get through to create some beanie hats, because again, I'm using the warm weather that we're experiencing here in the UK to really start building up my stockpile of hats so that as the weather starts to turn cold and hospitals are more likely to need the hats or want the hats, I've got them ready to go. So I really enjoyed that process of kind of looking at my yarn stash, because I've got yarn in bins and safe places. But it was nice to just kind of be able to go through all of it and decide what I wanted to focus on using for the week. And so it was kind of like meal prepping, but with yarn. So I really enjoyed it. And I was successful because, as you can see over here, these are the beanie hats that I created from that stash of yarn that I went through. So I was able to create lots of hats with the yarn that I had set aside to create. They all get a little tag once it's past my quality control standards. So these are the beanie hats that I created, which was pretty cool. And I really like them. I think they all turned out really good. I like the color of the tags too with the hats. I think those all went really well. But I actually overachieved because in addition to the yarn that I said I was going to use, I actually had some leftover scraps from two of the hats that I made that I combined to make a stripy beanie hat. So this is an extra bonus hat I wasn't planning on making. I had some of the leftover purple yarn, and so I created another stripy beanie hat out of the purple yarn. And then because I had some of that purple left, I used some colorful yarn that I had to make another stripy hat, which then made me want to finish using that ball of yarn. So I made this hat. And then I went really wild and used a bunch of scraps that I had to create this multicolored stripy hat. So I had a really good week. I think that's probably my biggest single week of hat creations. And if you watch Kelsey on YouTube, who always keeps the things, her labels from the yarn, this is my yarn stack for the week, so that felt pretty good. So that's what I got up to this week in creating beanie hats. Again, my largest week ever, I think that was 13 new hats, which makes my current stash, a stockpile of beanie hats completed and ready to go. That brings me up to 60. So that's amazing. I want to try and get it up to 80 before the cold weather, but if I keep this pace, I'm gonna crush that total. So anyway, I'm feeling pretty good about that. So what am I going to do for next week's beanie hats? So I'm going to use this brown yarn, which I really like, and I'm actually really looking forward to working with, and it's really soft. So I'm planning on using this. This will make 2 beanie hats, so I'll make 2 that are the same. There might even be a little bit left, which I will add to my scrap stash. Speaking of scrap stash, I have a big bin of scraps that I keep, and so it's getting a little out of control. So I'm going to switch the view here and show you my scrap stash because I want to dig into that a little bit to make some of this week's beanie hats. So join me on the table here and I will show you my scrap stash and how I plan to use that. Okay, so here's my yarn stash. Whenever after I make a hat and I've got any leftovers, I add them to my stash. And I've got this vintage trunk that I keep them in. And when the trunk gets too full to close, this is my cue to destash. And so I'm going to look through my stash here and pick out some yarns that I'm going to use this week to create some stripy beanie hats. So let's look at what we've got. I mean, as I'm looking through here, seeing some fun greens that could be going together. I'm seeing quite a lot of pinks that could be going together. Got some brighter colors in here that could go together. I'm seeing quite a lot of these blues that could be good to go together. Actually, these two here, I think that's maybe enough to make a beanie hat with those 2 colors. Yeah, maybe that's my first stripy beanie hat with these 2 blues. If I need a 3rd blue to go with it, maybe that blue, those 3 blues together, or what other blues? Or there's that blue. I don't like that as much. There's the really light blue. I don't like that. What about like a gray with these? Actually, I quite like that. This sort of has some gray tones to it. Maybe a gray as a 3rd color. Do we want a sparkly gray or a lighter gray? That's probably too light. Maybe that color. Those 3 together? Or do we like the sparkly better? I kind of like these together. So if I need a 3rd, I'd maybe do those 3 as one stripy beanie hat. So there's beanie hat number 1. Let's see, what's next? Actually, I really like these 2 together on the blue hat train. Maybe those 3 together. So that could be another stripy beanie hat, or do we like that color blue with it instead? Actually, I really like those 3 together. So maybe that's beanie hat number 2. Beanie hat number 2. Let's see, what else do we have here? We've got lots of pinks in here, lots of sparkly pinks, stripy pinks, this kind of pink, solid pink. Got lots of sparkly pink actually. Oh, that's white. Maybe we do a stripy pink hat. Pick 3 colors. Maybe those 3. Or what about those, actually, rather than that one? What about those? Do we put a lighter pink in with it? These 4? Maybe these 4 in a stripy beanie hat? Or do we like just those 3? Sort of like these 3, not this one. Do I like that one with it or without it? Actually, that could be a good contrast color. So maybe these 4 in a beanie hat. So that'll be beanie hat number 3, stripy. Let's see, what else do we have in here? We've done a blue one. We've done 2 blue ones. Oh, actually, I just found this gray. And with these other ones here that I was originally going to do, I think I actually like this gray better. It's sort of a blue gray. So I'm going to change my mind and do the stripy beanie hat with those 3. We'll put this one back in the stash. Let's see, we've got some darker purples in here, some neutrals. Maybe we do a neutrally brown colored one. What other neutrally colors do I have in here? Got these. That kind of goes, but kind of doesn't go. Let's see what other neutral colors are in here. There's some greens. What if we did that? Ooh, that's kind of a nice autumnal color combination. Maybe we'll do a beanie hat with these sort of autumnal colors. I've got another ball of sort of that autumnal. So let's do an autumnal beanie hat. I think this is probably enough to do a beanie hat with these. So that's 1, 2, 3. This is beanie hat number 4. Now, stripy hats do take a little bit longer to do just because you're switching out the yarn and kind of having to manage it in that regard. So stripy beanie hats take a little bit longer than non-stripy beanie hats. What about if we did like a navy and these lighter roving blue that's left over? What if we did a navy and blue combo? I wonder if I have enough of that. If I don't, I could add in, I've got loads of this, so maybe I add that as a 3rd color for the blue hat. Or do I have other navy? I've got other navy as well. So yeah, I like the idea of navy and this roving yarn. So I'll do a navy and blue stripy hat. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 5. 5 stripy beanie hats in a week is probably enough beanie hats to keep me busy. And I think that might have emptied out my case enough that I can probably close the lid. So that's always my, yep, that'll close now with what's left in here. That's always my bar of whether or not I've cleaned out my stash enough to live another day. So there we go. I've got 5 stripy beanie hats that I will try and make this week. So if you've got a scrap ball collection like I do, hopefully making some beanie hats with it is a way for you to stash bust. All right, so that's my plan for next week. We'll follow up and show you what I do or don't get completed in creating some more beanie hats for my stockpile. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in learning more about Meadowbank Crochet, of course, you can go to my website, www.meadowbankcrochet.uk. I'll put a QR code here as well. If you're interested, you can follow me on Instagram as well. So I've got that, and also Facebook. So you can find me in all of those places. Um, I'm also really interested if you're based in the UK and you've got ideas for how I might procure yarn. So how do I get a stockpile of yarn? The reason I say that is when people donate money to my cause, I really want to be careful with that money and maximize the amount of yarn that I can buy with their incredibly kind donations. So if you've got ideas for how I make the most of monetary donations so that I can really get the most yarn to make hats out of that, I'd be really interested in your ideas. So please do share. Speaking of sharing, I guess that's the last thing I'm going to do. So, of course, do all the YouTube things. But also, if you know somebody who's a crocheter or is just in this amazing crafting community who might find this cause interesting, please share this video with them or share the link to my channel, which I'll put up here, where they can find my first vlog as well as the tutorial along with this video as well. Please share it just so that we can get the word out there so more people who might be interested in being a part of this journey can get involved. And even if you don't want to get involved, I really appreciate you being here. Your being here is helping this channel grow. And ultimately, that's the goal, because I want to get the word out so that we together in this amazing crafting community can create a ton of beanie hats for people who I know are really going to appreciate them. So with that, I'll say see you next week, and thanks so much for joining. Have a fantastic day.